Hey everyone, today I'm going to be showing you the best Warzone settings for Call of Duty Modern Warfare, and I've probably watched about 10 to 20 of best settings videos for this topic and sort of taken and picked things out from all of them and mashed it up all into one for this video. All these other settings videos are 20 minutes, so that alone is worth liking for. So let's just hop right into it. So the first thing we're going to look at is button layout. Personally, I think tactical is the best layout. There's also standard. Those are the two major layouts that people use. Personally, I prefer this one because you can crouch, prone, and slide by just pressing down the R3 button, but I know some people prefer not to do that and prefer to just leave it on standard. Either way, you want to be using standard or tactical. Next, we're moving on to stick layout preset. I just keep that at default, as I'm sure most people do. For dead zone, I use 0.08. However, you want to use the lowest dead zone possible without getting any stick drift on your controller. If you guys want to learn how to decrease stick drift, make sure to check out the video on my channel where I go into depth about how to sort of fix that on your controller without having to buy a new one. Now, moving on to sensitivity, horizontal and vertical, I have it on 6.6, and it seems like for most pro players it sort of sits between the 5 to 8 range, so you want to try and stick within this range because on one hand you want to be able to turn quickly if someone's shooting you in the back, but on the other hand you also want to have good aim and be consistent and accurate at those close ranges, so try and stick with the 5 to 8 range for this. Moving down to ADS sensitivity, this one I'd say is definitely a preference thing. You want to be using something that's not too slow, not too fast, so you're consistently hitting your shots, which is the most important thing, of course. So with my ARs, I like having a lower sensitivity than with my snipers. So with low zoom weapons, I have it at 0.60, and with my high zoom, I have it at 0.80. So it's a little bit faster, and I'll probably end up increasing this high zoom up to like 1 or something like that. Moving on to aim response curve type, this one seems to be up in the air. It seems like every pro player is using a different type of setting for this one. Personally, I just switched to dynamic recently and it felt really good. However, there are tons of pro players who still use standard and linear. This one you're definitely going to have to experiment with. Onto controller vibration, you always want to have this turned off because the last thing you want when you're shooting at an enemy at medium to long range is having your controller shake, which can mess up your aim. As we head on down to aim assist, we have this at standard. However, I do know a lot of people are experimenting with focusing and precision and all these different types. However, it seems like most players are just sticking with standard aim assist. A lot of these ones are personal preference. However, I do recommend that you turn on use reload behavior to contextual tap, so you don't have to hold the square button every time you're trying to pick up something. Instead, you can just tap it and it'll pick up the item for you. And similar to some of the weapons, all these movement ones are pretty much just personal preference. Now, the big one in here is film grain, which you want to have at the lowest visual possible because what this does is it produces a lot of visual noise as said on here, and look what happens when you raise it. It makes the screen very grainy, and all these textures and all these items in game will appear very grainy, which is the last thing you want. All it does is obscure your view, so you want to make sure to put this all the way down to 0.00. And with tooltips, accessibility, all these things again are personal preference. However, with the exception of these two items, which is motion blur, I know a lot of people turn this off to begin with simply because it makes people dizzy, and it's actually a good idea to turn these off because again, all it does is obscure opponent's views. So if you move too fast in one direction, maybe looking left or right, it might blur your opponent and you might not notice them as easily. Definitely recommend you keep these off so you can see opponents more easily. With the HUD, again, this is all personal preference. It really doesn't matter whether you use a square or circle, and all these are personal preference. You gotta have that gore and profanity on though, or what's the point, right? As of right now, I'd say most people would probably have it best to keep it on boost high. However, there's gonna obviously be individual circumstances where a different mode might be better. So again, experiment with these and maybe stick with boost high until you found something that you think's better. So I like keeping my master volume up, of course, so you can hear in game. Music volume really doesn't matter, so I just turn that down all the way. Dialogue volume, I do like to keep up a little bit so you can actually hear when the radio chat calls out different kill streaks and stuff like that, UAVs, just so you have a heads up on those things. And of course, effects volume, you really want to hear those in-game effects, hear people walking around. And again, all these things are personal preference. And that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. I've watched so many different videos on best settings for Warzone, taking a little bit from all those and sort of mixing it into one. If you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe. Don't forget to check me out on twitch.tv/feverxbl. I'll have that up on the screen for you. I do live stream Modern Warfare 3 times per week and some bonus streams on occasion. And other than that, guys, I'd like to thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.